Hey, this is Dag, and you're listening to Beyond Trek Podcast.
Red alert.
Spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. Hey everybody, and welcome back to Beyond Trek Podcast. I'm your host, Dag. In the room with me, we've got host Renzo and host Big J. Today we're going to talk to you about Discovery Season 4, Episode 10, The Galactic Barrier. But before we get into that, we just want to say that as the co-hosts of Beyond Trek Podcast, we want to express our unabashed support for the Ukraine, their president, and their people at this time. What's happening with the Russia invasion is akin to the Cardassians taking over Bajor. It's wrong, and it needs to stop. That being said, welcome to our Season 4, Episode 10 review.
Well said, Dag. Well said.
Yep, definitely.
So we open with this really cool comm badge. I have one of these comm badges. I love them.
Do you have it there to show?
No, I don't have it with me.
Oh, that's
I mean, it's under the desk somewhere. But it's interesting because that is not that's not a Discovery badge. That is a Picard badge. That badge is 800 years old as of this time. Almost 800, maybe 700.
Maybe Kovich is a bit of a collector, like some people I know.
Like Osira? Yeah. Oh, me. That's right.
Yeah,
you.
Me. Got it.
It's not broke, don't fix it.
If it's not Dag, don't comm badge it.
Renzo, let's see the guns. You just got back from the gym. Give us a flex.
No, I wore this because it's a Vulcan episode and it says "Live long and prosper" on it.
Live long and prosper. That's awesome. What's today? Arms Day?
No, chest day technically, but
chest day. Gotcha.
But no, this scene was really cool. I actually really liked the whole interaction between Kovich, like knocking the limitations of the Universal Translator. I thought that it was pretty appropriate. It makes sense that it's going to have the limitations of whoever programmed it, right? Like the Matrix for it originated with Hoshi. I'm sure it's been improved over the centuries, but there's still a frame of reference bias, the confirmation bias that he calls out. So that's something that we haven't heard discussed before, and it's a good thing to bring up, especially when you're dealing with something as unknown as 10C.
Yeah, they just assume that any race they encounter is going to be like them or use verbal communication that the translator can easily translate. But we don't know what kind of communication the 10C uses. What if it's telepathic? What if it's could be any number of things. So they make that assumption. I guess because the Universal Translator has been used for so long, they probably assume that, well, this can translate anything. But I would like to see, and hopefully they go this route, where they have to find a way to communicate without being able to use the Universal Translator, because 10C is so wholly different that the communicator Universal Translator is just like, I'm lost, don't know.
I'll be honest, we've seen some races in Trek that are distinct enough from basic humanoids that some problems with the Universal Translator make sense. So like the Horta from TOS makes sense that there would be some trouble there. But the Horta went through the effort of learning some way to communicate with us, right? The Horta was the one that wrote "No kill I" on the ground, right? Same thing with races like the Nassine. They learned our language. The Q learned our language, right?
Even the Skrian, it took the UT just a little bit longer to figure that out.
Yes. And I mean, the Temerian language was complicated and distinct enough from the standard that it was not mutually intelligible, right? So I think that the onus here is not on the Federation to figure out how to communicate with 10C, but really the reverse. If 10C is that much more advanced, has that much more experience, and has been around that long, they should have a means of communicating with us. Similar to the Telosians, maybe, because they just did mind speak, but who knows?
Right. And so if they do that, if they do mind speak like the Telosians, the Universal Translator isn't going to pick that up. It has to be verbal sounded communication. Did anyone else think it was interesting? I'm glad they did it. Is this maybe the second or third mention of Klingons that we've had in the third season and this season? And I still want to know, what's the deal? Where are they? What's going on? I know that's not what this episode is about, but they seem to be very obviously not really talked about. Or
My suspicion is that they're keeping the Klingons open-ended because Strange New Worlds is going to fill in some of the gap, and because it's a different writing team, they don't want to. They're not going to lay down Discovery. Okay, so here's what happened with the Klingon Empire after you left, because Strange New Worlds is going to impact that.
Well, we know some of what happened to the Klingon Empire after they left too, right? Like it just flows into TOS, right? Like the Klingon Federation, Cold War, leading up to the Organian Peace Treaty, all that. We know that bit of history, right? What I think is actually going on is they're trying to avoid having to retcon their adjustments as to what the Klingons look like. I think they're just trying to stay away from that, and I think that that's perfectly fair because the community backlash for the redesign of the Klingons was, let's shall we say, not great generally, right? We know that the Klingon change in appearance is not a full retcon of any kind because Lower Decks decided to go with DS9 looking Klingons, much to my appreciation. And the design of Klingon ships that was used in Prodigy was also going, again, back to the DS9 standard, not what we had seen with the design aesthetic from Discovery. So I feel like there's just like a little bit of murkiness here in which design they're going to go with. And as a result, they're just kind of like, if it doesn't matter to the story, don't dive into it. That's fair.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they avoid any interaction having to deal with Klingons, actually seeing Klingons in the seasons of Discovery because of that.
Yeah,
Tired of hearing about the fandom and everyone complaining about how they look. So I'd be burned out on it and just say, you know what, fuck it.
Yeah.
We're not doing Klingons because we've heard more than our fill of why do they look like this or that or anything else. So I don't blame them.
And if you want an in-universe explanation, think of it this way, right? We know that at least as far as the Battle of Procyon 5, I think it was what it was, the Klingons were part of the Federation, right? So that's 28th or 29th century. Cool. And maybe in such a post-capitalist world, the Klingon Empire kind of like, well, not even the Klingon Empire, the Klingon race regressed or collapsed back to Kronos and is just kind of like a one planet race at this point, right? Like they're not major players anymore when they reduced their impact on galactic affairs, so they're just not that relevant.
Which would totally hamstring them during the burn.
Right.
Without an empire to have even sublight travel between worlds for mineral and resource acquisition, they might have just collapsed and they just have a few outlying worlds now.
Remember, Praxis, their main energy production, was an orbital moon to their homeworld, right? So, yes, they had to have their planet like protected and re-terraformed so that they could stay on it, but that doesn't mean that they fixed the moon. The moon is still probably a wreck, right? If you look at ancillary media, Star Trek Online, whatever, the moon is still like fucked.
Yeah.
So there's no way to fix a broken moon. So yeah, I mean, it's probable that they're just around. They're just not major players anymore.
Gotcha.
So what we see here.
Wait, did you want to call out the Gilligan's Island reference?
I was gonna just like set the stage for what we got going on right here.
Okay,
like,
go ahead.
There is a Gilligan's Island reference in this scene, but what's happening in this scene is that the DMA task force is sitting down to discuss options, and we've got our greatest Ted Danson here. You know, not actually Ted Danson.
It's when you want Ted Danson, but you don't have Ted Danson money.
It's Wish.com Ted Danson for Star Trek. David Cronenberg, who I actually kind of respect a hell of a lot more than Ted Danson just because he's on Star Trek. He is briefing them on, you know, we did this thing and the DMA is back and we may have wholly underestimated their capabilities. We might even be able to talk to them. They've got astrolinguists in the room talking about methods of communication. They also make a point to reference the isolytic weapon that was detonated in the last episode and say like that may be like a severe no-no to them. Though I'm in the camp that like we can't hold them to our Khitomer Accords. You know, isolytic weapons might just be a nuisance to these people who are mining for the active ingredient in Omega.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting too, right? Like we finally found out what it was that Kovich has been working on as his high priority project this whole season, right? Him with Bryce and whomever else, they're trying to figure out a way to communicate directly through the Galactic Barrier. That's a big revelation. We've been wondering what Kovich is up to this whole season.
Yeah, and it also explains Bryce's absence. He's been on, you know, this super important task force. Now, what actually I want to just go behind the scenes and say that the actor for Bryce has actually been in a new movie that's going to be on Netflix, and I think it's Netflix. And so they're trying to explain his lack of appearances there, but it's a really cool thing. Sorry, everything is like slipping my mind because I'm in Star Trek mode, and I'm like, oh, that's outside Star Trek. Don't think about it. But yeah, the actor rapped on it's like a 1920s sort of Black History special, and so that's really cool for the actor for the opportunity. But yeah, they're talking about the isolytic weapon, and Vance makes a point to say this was not us, this was two people, and he strikes back and he's like, they may not care. You know, it doesn't matter if it's two people or an entire area. If they're ticked off, they're going to be pointing fingers.
I also like that the inclusion of the so Tarina from Navarre, but also the delegate that came from Earth. It's good to have her back as well, and she's on the mission that goes on in the episode later too. But it's nice that they keep bringing back these like representatives from familiar places.
Yeah, I like the continuity of that, so that we keep seeing them and not just random people each time that they do these, and that there actually is a task force and taking this seriously. Before in Trek, I don't recall many times that we saw a task force like this that was any more than just Picard and his senior staff in a conference room. Like, this is a all hands on deck, pulling resources together to try to make this communication, especially now that they may be pissed off that we broke one of their drills.
I can think of a couple examples in like Deep Space Nine with like just the Dominion War planning, and then on the Dominion side of the Dominion War planning, there were definitely some like apparent working groups.
Right.
But besides that, you're right. There hasn't really been much besides like the captain and his crew.
Yeah. Another thing I really like about this is, as you mentioned in DS9, they kept bringing back familiar faces to keep that, expand on the world building. There's a lot of people who are like, oh, it feels too small if you keep bringing back the same faces, but these are leadership roles, and they are, species-wide leadership roles. They brought back Gowron, and they had multiple cameos of Romulan leadership reappearing, even if it was a different actress like Senator Kretak. So this just really sort of hits the nail on the head that we have this expansive cast now from which to pull for these kinds of scenes, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the Rillick actress does an amazing job in this scene too, where she makes it clear that like she knows what she's talking about, but she's here to try and like bridge the gaps, bridge consensus, which sets her up for the roles that she has in the rest of the episode too.
Yeah, and
they make a joke that goes back to like 1970s TV, which is amazing.
60s, yo.
60s, okay.
Gilligan's Island was early to mid 60s. And they had like 3 or 4 spin-off movies in the 80s and I think one in the early 90s. But yeah, they mentioned going on a 3-hour tour through the Galactic Barrier, and immediately I was like, a 3-hour tour, a 3-hour tour.
The song was stuck in my head the rest of that day.
Name of the ship is the SS Minnow in that show, just in case anybody was wondering.
I admit I didn't get the reference, and I wouldn't have gotten the reference if a friend of mine had not told me, "Hey, did you get the joke in the first 5 minutes?" And I was like, "What?"
It's okay.
Tuvix didn't either.
It's
no,
okay.
Tuvix just wants my food.
The meeting gets interrupted with Burnham getting a call and asking for Rilak and Vance to join her, and they're briefed by Stamets, who mentions that the DMA controller is the same size but way more powerful than the one Book and Tarka destroyed.
And it's going to be a lot faster in the harvesting location because they use, I guess, a higher tier harvester. I think that was the reaction they had with getting that one destroyed. Is now they probably 10C probably thinks, well, that one was destroyed. Either they know or they don't know. I don't know that part, but they definitely want to get that done and get out of there so that whatever happened doesn't happen again.
I'm of the opinion that 10C is so far beyond who we are and where they are as a people that I think of it like miners who are like drilling and they're like, oh, I didn't actually anticipate there was going to be an iron plate out here. Get a better drill shaft. And the DMA is just chewed up, so they pull the DMA out. And they throw a more rigorous drill shaft in there to get through that iron plate, metaphorically speaking, and commence to continue again with a more powerful drill bit. So
now I'm thinking of the iron ferrite that they landed on in Armageddon.
Get the judge.
And get the judge.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I don't think it's like an attempt to like punish us for having blown up the first one. I think it is more just a, okay, well, I guess it's tough enough there. Let's just up the dosage, up the power on it.
Honestly, whenever Star Trek has done the species that are so far beyond us, they have either been super inquisitive, like the Organians and those aliens that possessed not those aliens. The Organians possessed Enterprise's crew to observe them, and then there was that episode of Voyager where there were invisible aliens who were doing things to them. And so we have these aliens that are like observing the crews, and then you have aliens like the Q who are a little mischievous, and then you have like these other, super powerful out there aliens that are just like, we don't bother with you. This is the first time in Star Trek they've done a thing where it's like there's a super powerful race out there that thinks of us as like mites, like, and that's where just I'm spinning off. I don't know if that's the actual case. I'm hoping that's the case because it would be cool, because then we have this crazy extragalactic power that just thinks of us as microbes. That's all we are.
Well, so here's the counter thought that I have to that is that yes, we're probably insignificant to them, mites or whatnot, and it almost seems like it is kind of that way because they're doing this mining, this harvesting. They don't care about the collateral damage. It doesn't mean anything to them. They may not even notice it. Like we said, with an anthill, you're vacuuming your carpet, you have no idea what you're disturbing or taking up. But here's the other thing I was thinking is that maybe they do know exactly what they're doing. They're not intentionally trying to cause this damage, but whatever their purpose is for this far exceeds any damage or collateral damage that they're causing. And then that's my thought is, what if this is a case of that there's, I don't want to say something stronger than 10C out there. I hope that it's not just oops, we didn't know you guys lived here, we were just drilling for minerals. And that's the thing is I don't think that it's intentional per se.
Yeah, I don't think I think that the analogy or the theory that the characters are presented that 10C is just so far advanced that we're mites to them, right? It's like we're building a skyscraper, no one checks with the ants that live there if it's okay to build a skyscraper there, right? I think that's an interesting enough approach to it. I'm okay with it. I'm hoping it's more that than it is like, oh, there's an evil extragalactic thing. This is how we rebuild the galactic barrier. This is how we protect you from them, kind of thing. Because that's just more, another big bad evil thing just far enough away. Because that's boring. Again, we've gotten that enough times.
Yeah, and the last thing we need is Synthulu.
Right.
I really don't want Synthulu to show up anymore, ever.
I did want to call out one thing. So the doctor that they introduce in the scene, the xenolinguistics, Hirai, he's played by Hiro Kanagawa, who's been in like a million things. He's like one of those like sci-fi actors that ends up in every show in some moment or another. Yeah. He's really good, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they use him for in this.
Agreed.
Yeah, I recognize the face, but not the name.
Yeah, no, he was in Man of the High Castle. He was in Altered Carbon. He was in iZombie. He's been in a bunch of things.
I feel like he's been in Marvel at some point.
Maybe.
So yeah, we return to the briefing that Stamets is giving the president, the admiral, and the captain, and because of the increased threat this new DMA shows, Relac is like, we got to do this first contact mission ASAP. So they set up to do that. Vance and Relac exchange some witticisms. And Relac tells Vance that it was her constitutional duty to inform him that she's transferred her powers temporarily to the vice president. She's going to be on this mission. She was the top ambassador for 20 years, and she believes that her experience would be ideal for the mission, given the complexities they face. Vance protests, saying that Discovery's leaving the galaxy, something that had never been done, and they might not come back. He tells her that she is essentially the Federation now, but Relac counters that this was why it was crucial that she be there when contact was made. Vance says he can't talk her out of it. Relac praises his effort thus far as Starfleet's commander-in-chief and is confident that whatever came next, he would get them through that as well. So noting that he's the commander-in-chief, we kind of go back to that discussion that we had in a couple episodes prior. Admiral Vance is Starfleet's commander-in-chief. That sort of settles the debate.
Yep.
President Relac has command over the commander-in-chief in some way, but
I mean, he seems to take direct orders from her.
Right.
He's just the one in charge of Starfleet.
Right. He is the fleet admiral, the 5-pipper.
The 5-pipper. I like that one.
That's why I've got the 5 pips.
But yeah, no, that was a cool bit of like character development for her, right? Like, we've seen that she's willing to take risks and she's willing to take sacrifices, but we didn't know where she came up from. Now we know she came up through the diplomatic corps.
Yeah.
Good. That's a good person to have in charge when you're dealing with like extra galactic, super powerful entity that can wipe away solar systems and has wiped away solar systems.
Just to add
assuming
a note,
that they'll be able to even talk to them, be able to communicate. Sorry, Dag.
just to dissent from that opinion, 20 years as the Federation's top ambassador during the burn, where we're trying to maintain strings that are thinning between relationships and other aliens in the galaxy that we have known. Is that really strong preparation for first contact with an extra galactic species?
Can you think of anybody better?
You're not
who's
wrong.
going to have more experience?
Yeah.
Remember, compare politicians generally to the alternative, not to the almighty, right? To quote Joe Biden on that one, right? Like, compare them to the reasonable alternative, not to the perfect, because nobody's perfect.
That's true. You make a really good point. There isn't anybody else who's more qualified to do this.
Like, if you could grab Wesley Crusher, right, and have him appear here, I think Wesley Crusher would probably be better. Sure. But I don't see Wesley Crusher reprising that role from this.
If Will Wheaton returned to the series, I would literally cry. Literally. It'd be
I think we all would.
It'd be a great surprise for Picard season 2. Like, he just shows up in 2024. Jean-Luc, what are you doing here?
This is all wrong. Go back home, Jean-Luc.
I'm here to observe a Nexus event. I can't interfere, but if you're here, this is just weird. Anyway. Cut over to Booker and Tarka. I can never remember his name. I keep thinking Tarkin, like Star Wars.
Grand Moff Tarkin.
Doesn't help that I watched Rogue One today.
It's a great movie.
It is my favorite Star Wars movie of all time.
Ooh.
Yeah. And we can talk about that.
Please tell us why Dag is wrong in the comments.
Yes.
Tell him why he's wrong so that we can have more ammunition when we argue this later.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Booker bluntly tells Tarka that he's found a habitable planet for him to settle on and has packed a bag for him. He's clearly incensed, as the DMA had returned more powerful than before because Tarka wouldn't back down. Tarka protests that all the evidence indicated an internal power source and attempts to justify his actions with both the scientific process and his discovery that the DMA's power source was external, coming from within the 10C's hyperfield. Booker intends to go through the 10C space himself, but Tarka points out that the mycelial network does not exist within the hyperfield, and that the...
Well, just a point there, right? Like, Tarka's, like, legitimately arguing for his life here, right? Like he's it's the first time that Tarka seems to be in jeopardy personally, and he's behaving differently than he normally does, right? Like Tarka's usually really sanctimonious, really superior, right? Here's the first time we're seeing him being like, oh, well, hold on, I did these good things too, man. Like he can tell that he's in a bit of jeopardy here, and that's a
he's
a good
about
change.
he's about to get marooned.
Yeah, he's BSing. That's what he's doing. He's basically saying like, whoa, whoa, whoa! I didn't do all that. I discovered the power source is external to the DMA. That's fine. I still don't know if that justifies just treason and isolated weapon
right.
use, and you know.
Yeah, so one thing I did find interesting about this whole discussion, and it comes up more later in the episode too, right? But they talk about how the mycelial network doesn't connect through the galactic barrier itself, right? But earlier in this show, for the last 3 seasons, we have heard that the spore drive can take you anywhere in the universe. Anywhere in the universe means outside of the galactic barrier, right?
I think
this,
very conventional way to, well, if they could just skip around the galactic barrier, then we wouldn't have an episode. We wouldn't have the
I agree.
the awe and spectacle. But you're right.
And this makes sense. It makes sense that the galactic barrier would impede everything, right? Mm-hmm. However, for this whole run of this show, we have heard over and over that the spore drive can instantly take you anywhere in the universe.
So
anywhere in the galaxy is a lot smaller than anywhere in the universe.
I'm just going to say this is an example of Star Trek being Star Trek, where they have interchangeably used galaxy and universe in terminologies that we understand. We're like, whoa, whoa, whoa! Galaxy is like an atom on a sand pebble on a beach on a planet. Universe is the planet. So, yes.
I can't think of any other time where they fucked that up that bad, though.
No, not that badly. That's a case of before, sure, you could say that it was taking anywhere in the universe, but now suddenly,
I mean,
you have this episode and you don't want to do that.
It's not the biggest of deals, right? It is just a single word that they could retcon in the past of the whole show. Fine. Mm-hmm. It just is a notable change, right? Because the universe is much more than just a galaxy. If they'd said anywhere in the galaxy from the very beginning, then consistency is achieved, fine. But this is notably different. And the galactic barrier isn't the only barrier, right? Because we have the one at the galactic core as well, the Great Barrier. Uh-huh. And can they jump through that one too? Can they go visit Stova Core if they want to? I don't know.
Well, I think that they... Of course, when they were saying that you can go anywhere in the universe, you don't anticipate a couple seasons later that you're going to be dealing with a storyline where you want to limit what the spore drive can do. Totally get that. It's kind of like I was actually been watching this documentary today on Superman and how difficult it's been to take all these powers he has and have any kind of challenge facing him. In the early days, it was kind of painting in a corner. But Superman can do anything. So how do you make that a story when he's got all these powers? Kind of the same thing with the spore drive. When you have a means to travel anywhere instantaneously, okay, you've already got that. And to say that they could do that anywhere in the universe, but here you've got this story where you want to make the galactic barrier issue its own whole episode. The best you can do is just kind of hope that nobody remembered a couple seasons prior that you said it could take you anywhere in the universe. I get it. It's Star Trek though. It is so Star Trek. How often have they done?
Yeah. No, we've gotten many times where it's like the Enterprise is the only ship in the sector or the only ship in the quadrant that can get here in time, and it's like
always.
Really? Come on. But that's smaller in scale than saying galaxy versus universe. But either way, I just wanted to get that little bit off my chest. One thing I did want to say is that this is actually the first time we've seen the galactic barrier since TOS. We'd seen the Great Barrier in Star Trek V, but this is the first time we've actually seen it since TOS, and that is a long time.
And since the first actual or the second episode of TOS?
I think it's the second, but yeah.
The first episode is the man trap. The second episode is where no man has
gone before. Yeah,
and that's with Gary Mitchell and the tombstone that reads James R. Kirk instead of James T. Kirk. Yeah, and then So yeah, it's been almost 60 years since we've seen the Galactic Barrier. It's been almost in this time 1,000 years in canon since we have ventured to the Galactic Barrier. Strangely enough, here's a little bit of trivia. Does anybody remember the only time on screen that we saw them bypass the Galactic Barrier with no problem whatsoever?
TNG, the one where they go like at the speed of memory or whatever, with the first of the Traveler episodes.
So that
it's
episode is a
Yeah.
callback to the original series episode. It's called Where No One Has Gone Before.
Yeah, that's what it is.
And
They went to all these other different galaxies, and
yep, they ended up in like the galaxy of thought and stuff. What I thought was really interesting was the first time they jumped to a galaxy that was supposedly adjacent to the Milky Way by millions of light years. And they were going to send a subspace message that won't be received by Starfleet until 2413.
nice.
That's real interesting.
Hey, we're stuck, yo. We're lost.
But
I mean, their messages travel a lot faster than you'd think. Then
well, we
that's
could make
40 years to cross an extragalactic plane.
I could make a whole episode about why we need subspace boosters for that to work, but anyway, that's just me. I do want to get back on track because we're half an hour in and we've only covered the first 2 scenes. We're not even at the opening credits yet.
Jesus. How?
Well,
Every
no,
damn
hold
time.
on though. The pre-credits amount of episode this time was ridiculous. It was like 15 minutes
Yes,
before
it
the credits
was.
even
Oh,
hit,
yeah.
Yes,
which I
it
think is the
was.
longest we've ever gone in a Trek episode.
I would agree. I
Sure.
would agree. It would be cool to do a sync up like collage where all the opening credits are synced up between all the episodes, but then we just see how much before and after runs into that, and then beyond. Anyway. All right, so back at Federation headquarters, Saru tells Bryce that they'll be leaving once Discovery's shield upgrades are complete. If we just talked about how in the previous scene they mentioned that they were going to need to outfit the shields with antimatter, negative antimatter, or something like that.
No, it was
It was antimatter.
No, it was programmable. It was anti-programmable matter. Programmable antimatter. That's what it was.
Programmable antimatter,
Right? Yeah,
okay.
to disrupt the null space effects on the ship.
Yeah, because wouldn't
in
negative
the Galactic
antimatter be
Barrier.
matter?
Yes. Basically. But no, it was programmable antimatter, which is a cool idea, right? Because it implies that you can do the same things that you can with regular programmable matter, just in an anti-format.
That's no, I mean 1,000 years, I'm all for it. So yeah, Discovery's undergoing some shield upgrades. Saru expresses some regret that Bryce remains behind to continue working with Kovich. Bryce isn't sure they would have working extragalactic communications before they made contact, but any breakthrough at all would be huge, opening up new possibilities for exploration beyond the galaxy. He does admit he will miss them, and Saru returns the sentiment, saying that any voyage without him will be quite the adjustment. Bryce wishes them all luck. As Bryce leaves Discovery, Saru turns to see Tarina.
Which goes back to the whole awkwardness of every Tarina and Saru scene. But I think that Tarina ghosts him in the most delightful way. Like, I laughed my ass off when that scene ended. It was hilarious, where she was just like, excuse me, bye, after professing this interest in me. Oh, it was hilarious.
Getting ghosted by a Vulcan, that's got
Yep.
to be something.
He approaches her. She had invited him to share a meal with her the last time they spoke, and he would like to take her up on that, but Discovery was leaving shortly and might not come back. He expressed the thought that what they had might be more than friendship. Before Tarina can reply, she is approached by one of her aides. She asks him to excuse her, leaving Saru with a question unanswered.
I hope the awkwardness with them comes to an end soon. There's only 2 more episodes in this season.
Same, dude, same.
They've
Like,
dragged it out enough. Like, make your move, Saru. Come on.
yeah, like at the very least, like show some of your post Vahari like assertiveness and like approach her, right?
know,
Like you don't
right?
have to be so meek anymore.
Yeah.
Well, that's a
Well,
whole
then we go-
discussion.
Back to Discovery, and Adira Tal has found herself returned from Trill,
Yep.
and
Gray's
Burnham asks
doing-
about Gray, so which is nice. We don't forget that Gray exists.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. Gray is, if you've forgotten, Gray is performing his guardian training to be a guardian at the pools for the symbiotes on Trill, which I think is really cool.
Yep, and we see some beautiful Stamets like wanting this continue to be a dad to Adira, to make sure that if ever they are hurting, that he wants to reach out to them and comfort them, which is admirable, especially when he reveals like later in the episode why he's like that. But it's a good instinct from Stamets to try and help them both, or all three of them, really like settle in and be happy. It makes a lot of sense. But we do see this funny little scene with Adira being tasked to worry about the forward shield emitters, and Burnham's like, I'm sure you'll do a good job. And Stamets like, no, this is very important. Go make sure it's doing okay, or whatever. Like, being like, put them on track and send them off to go do the thing. Don't let them just dawdle, essentially.
Well, the work that they were doing would pretty much save their lives, save the ship.
Absolutely. No, it was a big deal, right? But it was just like one of those, I can't understand how Adira didn't see it as a critical a job before Stamets like emphasized it for them. Because forward shield emitter sounds like a big deal, generally.
I would agree.
Me too.
Yeah, so Burnham encourages Stamets to hang in there before receiving a message. The president is waiting for her. In her ready room, Burnham asks to speak frankly before making clear that she did not want Relac questioning her orders on the bridge. As you recall, they did have some scuffles in episode 1, and they are going to be brought to the test this time around.
I know what Michael wanted to say and what I wish she would have said.
GTFO my starship.
Bitch, if you run your mouth like you did the last time on my ship, I will cut you.
I think Rillick was right the last time and is right this time too, though, right? Like,
no!
Rillick was like, there's a difference between questioning and having a question. That's a good point.
Well, okay.
I mean, yes.
You know, I disagree with how she handled that with... Sure, there's a difference between questioning and having a question, but there's questioning and then having too many questions at an opportune time.
Well, again, and we've talked
Just
about this again, Star Trek has never punched down to its audience either. We can sort of get the understanding of the difference between asking for something and then questioning someone's motives or intentions in the process of fulfilling their duties. That's the whole point of the captain of a starship, is you need to trust them to run that ship.
Yep.
And
that's the deal they come to, right? Like, Burnham is in charge of the ship and crew, and Rillick is in charge of diplomacy and the delegates.
Yeah.
A mutually agreeable like solution for them both, which, I mean, works.
Yep.
Yeah.
Totally good. Those parameters set, Burnham returns to the bridge, where Saru reports the additional supplies were loaded. And Tuvix has words to say about those supplies. He's like, where's my snacks, yo? I want my treats.
He just wants my whole dish. He already got his dinner. Sorry, you did cut out there for a second, Dag. So.
Yep. Let me get back to where we were in the lineup. And
the Saru line about herding cats.
Yep, but I gotta fix the visual. Okay. So we're aligned here. Yeah, there's the supplies are loaded, the delegates are settled in. He refers to an Earth adage about herding cats. Lieutenant Commander Nilsson reports that the mycelial network would thin the closer they got to the barrier, so Stamets would bring them 4 light years from the edge and proceed on warp drive from there. Burnham orders Lieutenant Commander Detmer to take the ship to a safe distance, and Lieutenant Christopher to open a ship-wide channel. Addressing the crew and delegates, Burnham reminds them that many had dreamed of going where no one has gone before when they were young, but had not expected to do so under the circumstances therein. Once they entered the barrier, they would be beyond comms contact and on their own, while innumerable worlds waited for them to make contact with the 10C and ensure the DMA does not do any more harm. It would not be easy, but with this ship and its crew united, Burnham is confident they will succeed. She then orders a black alert. Vance watches from Federation headquarters as Discovery activates its spore drive and quietly wishes them Godspeed. Do you know what happens right now? The credits roll.
It's crazy how much happens in this episode before we get the credits. Truly nuts.
Yes.
I want to sit down with the editor and be like, so what leads to these decisions? What leads to we're going to do the credits at the beginning and just show the episode versus we're going to have some urgent build-up for 6 minutes versus we're going to show all the things, all the cards on the table before the credits and then play the game and see who wins.
I think it'd be easier just do the credits at the beginning like they do with Prodigy. Get it over with instead of trying to find just that right place to do the credits.
Even in Prodigy, though, sometimes we'll get like a pre-credits teaser, right?
True.
Like we've had a few of them.
It's true. My thought process is in the era of streaming, why do we need open credits?
I love the opening credits. I live for them in
Renzo's
every show.
fired. Where's Suzanne?
I'm outvoted. No, I'm honest though. I do like seeing opening credits on shows. I think that shows that have progressive opening credits where they change depending on the season or the episode is even better. Game of Thrones started that like trend. The Expanse does it too. Others have done it as well. I like that a lot.
Well, and if I'm gonna go back to when I noticed that opening credits changed, I'm gonna talk about Babylon 5.
Absolutely.
The Babylon 5 opening credits changed every freaking season, and it was awesome.
The third season was great. I love those opening credits. Fourth season, trash.
Yeah, welcome to the Beyond Babylon podcast.
No, I'm sorry. The fifth season one I absolutely did not like. I think third and fourth.
But
the fifth season was the retrospective one where it's like all the voices of people who like been there before.
So look, I'll say opening credits have their place. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But can we all agree that if we're binging a show that we can disable opening credits between episodes?
Just click the skip button. Isn't that enough for you?
That's too
How
much.
much more do you need?
Too much effort.
It's one button.
It's one button every episode. Every single day, 15 button presses. That's annoying. I'm an efficiency
So tell me,
engineer.
Dag, how does one binge Discovery considering it comes out every week?
I go back to the first season and binge.
My point is, when they're releasing them like a TV show on TV once per week,
That's
which I'm not a fan of,
That's
it makes
fine.
sense to include the credits.
That's fine. One at a time, it's fine. New episodes, it's fine. If it's MacGyver and I'm binging, it's still fine. But for all the other shows, if I'm just binging TNG, I'd like to have like a button that's like disable opening credits until I turn my TV off. That's what I'd like. That's just my argument. But we're going to go back to after the credits now. Discovery arrives, but Owosakun says they're 9 light years from the barrier instead of 4. Stamets apologizes, saying the spore drive had not been used this far out before. Burnham asks Saru to update the delegates, then orders Detmer to set a course for the barrier at maximum warp.
So this scene made me realize something. We haven't heard a warp speed this entire season, and I don't think of any last season either. We always just hear maximum warp or just go to warp to some place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I bring this up because 9 light years is a bit of time of travel, sure, but at warp 9.99, it's not very much time,
It's
right?
like an hour.
If you're tracking like all good things warp speeds where it's like warp 13 and so forth, it might even be less than that, right? We don't know what the warp scale looks like in the 32nd century at all. They could be on warp 84 for all we know.
Well, I think that's something that the writers are probably not ready to tackle that, and it may not even really be that important because there's a lot, and I totally get your question. It makes sense. But for as far into the future as they are, I think they've been able to set out a lot of things already. But you're right. There are some things they probably are not ready to touch because talking about warp scale in this series, maybe they've got that precognition that, well, if you talk about warp scale now, any show that takes place before this is going to have to carefully adhere to that in some way, or the fan base will find out and it'll be discussed and beat up on. So I think avoiding the Klingons and defining warp scale probably
I get it.
save them a lot
with
of
you.
headache.
No, I get that. That's probably why they just don't want to set hard and fast rules that will have to be adhered to by Picard and Prodigy, which would and Lower Decks, which would have to adhere to them. Strange New Worlds is immune because of its time setting. It's just in TOS, so we know what the TOS speeds are like.
Right.
But yeah, I get it, and I think that that's a perfectly valid reason to dodge it, and they're dodging it in the right way. Just say maximum warp, or just say warp, or best speed, or something along those lines. It doesn't need to be said, but it is notable to me though that they're making a big deal out of like 5 extra light years, when even by Enterprise D time that wouldn't have been that bad. Would have been another half hour tops, kind of thing.
Yeah. So it's not bad.
Did y'all notice one of the delegates is a Ferengi?
I did.
Yeah.
New Ferengi though, not the old Ferengi that we saw on the pleasure barge.
All right, so Saru goes to talk to Dr. Culber as he is going to tell the delegates about their little travel hijink, and he is going to ask him to spread the word about the situation when he spots Tarina. He had not expected her to join the mission, but apparently the delegate from Navarre did not arrive before Discovery left, so Tarina chose to represent Navarre herself, another world leader, governmental leader, vacating their role of governmental leader to be a delegate in a diplomatic situation. I'm feeling like I need a Relac. Is it Relac? Am I saying that wrong?
Yeah.
President Relac. I need a Relac Tarina Kirk Spock episode. Just the two of them somewhere, somewhen, doing something Kirky Spocky. I think that'd be great.
I feel like Rulik is way more subdued versus Kirk, though.
Yeah. Oh, right? Yeah. They're like two opposite.
And Tarina is way less anal than Spock.
So we just retcon that Rulik has some kind of injection that keeps her mood subdued, and in this situation she doesn't have that, so she's a little more irrational. Or she's affected by something that the Vulcan is not affected by and is a little more irrational. There's all kinds
Rulik's
of
actress in her previous role on Man in the High Castle was literally a American Nazi housewife that took like drugs to keep herself from getting too emotional because that would cause problems for the party.
Well, then we can't do that.
No, I don't think so. I don't think she can do the whole like dead inside emotionless thing very well.
That's what Tim Russ said, is we can't redo the same character concept in a different thing without waiting a few years. Well, no, that's fine. I don't need to have my Relac Tarina Kirk and Spock crazy episode.
No, we can still do it. We just got to do it differently. I think Tarina has to be McCoy.
So
Tarina has to be the McCoy. No. So I think it's going to be a Kirk, Spock, and McCoy outing, but we just have to recast who's who. Tarina as the McCoy, Rillick as the Spock, because she is very logical when she's approaching problems. We just need to find our Kirk for the situation.
Tilly.
Oh yeah, that works. Tilly could be it.
Well, but she's not a diplomat.
No, we don't need a diplomat. I just need a wild card to do the thing, and it would just be really funny. A survival episode, another survival episode, I guess. Anyway, Culber's amused.
It could also be Saru. That could also play on our Kirk, Spock / Schick.
Oh boy. Satrina, Saru, Tarina, Satrina. So Culber's amused as he realizes Saru expressed his feelings, but Saru replies he would not have done so if he had known she would be on board and cannot conceive of any situation more awkward. Culber remembers when he first met Stamets. He was taken by his blue eyes and obsessed over his every word. Saru is somewhat reassured that he is not the only one made to feel foolish by his feelings and continues with Culber to inform the delegates. Meanwhile, on an unknown planet, Booker reminds Tarka that he had told him the programmable antimatter couldn't be beamed up, but he didn't see any shield generators preventing that. As they get closer, Booker sees a spire stretching into the sky and in a rage draws his phaser, demanding to know what Tarka's playing at. He recognizes the structure as part of an Emerald Chain work camp. Tarka insists it was not what Booker was thinking and that the camp had been out of commission for years. Booker realizes that this was the work camp that Tarka escaped from nearly 10 years before and wants to know the story before they proceed. Question. Anybody think it was weird that this work camp exists this close to the frickin' Galactic Barrier?
We don't know where it is. They could have jumped to wherever. They got a spore drive.
Yeah, I didn't get the impression that they were that close at all, because the spore drive, with where they went, it doesn't mean that it was close to the Galactic Barrier. It's just where Tarka knew they could get that next thing in the Cannonball Run.
All right.
To be able to get them through the Great Barrier.
My brain was like, oh, this planet is really close to the Galactic Barrier. What if Tarka's boyfriend is working for the 10C?
Nah.
That's just where my brain went. But that makes the world smaller.
Right. Yeah. I don't want to see any collaboration with the 10C and anybody.
Yeah.
How awful would it be if Oros's species are the 10C?
I would quit.
I would be really pissed.
I would quit Star Trek. I would.
Well, we already have the Quit Star Trek podcast, so we can't be them.
We may quit Discovery. Maybe
they're
not
actually
quit Trek,
a lot of
but...
fun. They're actually a lot. They're very sarcastic about their show. They don't actually quit Star Trek. They just burn it up.
Well, and so Tarka and meets this person Oros, and they're supposed to be working on a project together that the Emerald Chain has going on, and we get some more backstory from Tarka, which I don't mind a backstory, but to me it seemed like maybe got more than what we needed as a backstory for Tarka.
I loved the backstory. I thought it was very interesting. I thought it made him a much more interesting character. I still don't think it changes the fact that he is still like an asshole and a douchebag, and it doesn't make him a better person.
Right there with you. He's a sympathetic dickhead, and I don't want him to I don't want to feel any different about him because of it.
Yeah, no, I don't even think he's sympathetic. I understand why he wants these things. I'm not extending him any sympathy though. No, you still are selfish and self-centered about all of these things. You say that you want to save lives, but you don't care about the lives here. You just want to leave, right? Like he makes it very clear that his objective in this whole thing is not the destruction of the 10C or the prevention of the 10C from attacking our galaxy. It's get 10C's power source so he can go to elsewhere, right? I get it. I'm not sympathetic with you, dude. I get why you're doing it. Thank you for the background.
Not only do I get it, but there's things that happen in this flashback in this episode that make me go like, do you really need the DMA to do that? Really?
Amen, dude. Like, I had the same thought, right? Like, the first time that this transporter thing was supposedly used, it was done with a geothermal power plant and a warp core.
On this planet.
I feel like we could do that elsewhere. You don't need the DMA's power core.
Right?
It seems a bit much, because we've had got to the point in DS9 really where it felt like going to the mirror universe was just like going to summer camp.
They've explained that though. They've explained that the mirror universe and the prime universe have diverged more and more, so it's harder to transfer between the two. But that's just the mirror universe. We don't know what universe Oros went to at all. He might be at something really different, somewhere in the multiverse.
I want him to be in the Kelvin timeline.
I can see it taking a lot of power, but the fact that a geothermal power plant and like a warp core managed to do it tells me it's not that crazy.
Now,
a starbase should be able to do this.
So let's forego whether or not it was successful. We don't know what happened to Oros.
Right.
We know that
That's
there's
true.
a symbol that was carved into the wall that Tarka has taken as a beacon of hope to drive Tarka's motives. But we don't know if they succeeded. We don't know if the power there was a solution that enabled him to do it with the power that he had. So that's a big gaping hole in our understanding right now. But what we do know is that they spent a couple of years there working on these things enough to become close friends, to have their own little in-jokes and mutual support tools and coping skills, like where they would just repeat every third digit of a decimal of the golden ratio. it was nice to see him not be a jerk, but you know, there's still some
It's
explaining that needs to be had about why he chose to be a jerk after all of this came out. You know,
I think he's kind of a jerk by default, and Oros managed to be like somebody that he found to be his intellectual equal partner, and so he's not a jerk to Oros, but to everybody else, you're all dumb. I'm gonna be an asshole to you, kind of guy.
Because he's smarter than everyone, is how he feels and thinks.
so it takes them a year to become friends, and we flash forward back to Tarka and Book talking about how far away this stash of programmable antimatter really is. And then we go back to Discovery. Now, Discovery comes out of warp at the edge of the Galactic Barrier, and the crew stares in wonder at it for a moment. It's actually kind of cool. It was giving me very strong TOS vibes with like bubbles of the galaxy just sort of floating in between this rift. I think modern science has established that the galaxy doesn't have a galactic barrier around it. The stars just stop. And it makes me wonder what the escape velocity is needed for the galaxy, because you need an escape velocity for Earth. And if the stars aren't just floating freely between galaxies, what's the escape velocity required to leave the galaxy?
It's their angular momentum. It's not about the escape velocity. All the stars are kind of like rotating together in the same kind of like orbital plane around the core of the galaxy. So if you had energy enough to go just in the opposite direction, you'd be fine. It's not a question of velocity. It's just like everything else is moving with inertia in the same plane.
And this has been your science moment with Renzo.
But no, I also love the way that the Galactic Barrier looked. I think it's a great updating of the old TOS, like purple shiny line. Really looks cool. The bubbles on the inside kind of make some sense, right? Like you're going to have some energy distortions and they'll form vacuoles or whatever as things travel. I liked it. It was cool. Zora being the one to compute the best thing, the best path, makes perfect sense. She's the ship's computer. Yeah, she's going to be faster than a person. So, yeah, I thought it was a good scene.
And they're going to hide in the bubbles, which I thought that was really cool to hop between bubbles to get through there. And it was different. I also was really found it peculiar how they changed the look. Like it says here, grayscale. There's like this negative energy, but it made them see everything visually different, which we had never seen that before. I don't.
There's just a shifting of the light.
Yeah.
The light waves to a different scale.
So that's not totally unrealistic, right? Like there's a thing called the Doppler Effect, right? As something is moving towards you or away from you, the color of its light shifts, right? So things that are moving away from our galaxy, we see generally red shifted. Things that are moving towards us, we see generally blue shifted, right? Here, if things are not moving in a way that matches with the regular behavior of the universe because of the Great Barrier and it being artificial or whatever, it's going to change the way light behaves, so we're going to perceive it differently. That part makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I did want to say, I wonder if the Enterprise, Kirk's Enterprise, and the SS Valiant that traversed the Galactic Barrier before, were they just in a spot that didn't have the vacuum bubbles or the vacuoles, right? Like, or did they just not have that option? Because that wasn't there. Or is this just something that's kind of new to the Galactic Barrier? Maybe it's breaking down or something. Maybe it's just too old.
Well, that episode was in the 1960s, and they didn't have the budget to do all that.
Sure.
It happened during the commercial break.
Could be.
So they're getting systems ready to traverse this thing. They're ordering a double check of shields and a multiphasic scan of the barrier to figure out what they're getting into, and better yet, how to get out of it.
Oh, yeah. They're going to go through. They need to be able to have a way to come back. But I think, Renzo, to answer your question, this could be something, if we're going to look for an in-universe explanation in the difference with the Great Barrier when Kirk on the Enterprise and before that Valiant went through, compared to now, I'm sure it's more than enough time for, I don't know, almost 1,000 years or so to expand, maybe expand and change. I know it's kind of
that's
limited.
fair. It could definitely change. That I can't argue, right? But I'm thinking maybe this is more interesting than that. Maybe this is a sign that the Galactic Barrier is breaking down, or it's starting to fade away. Maybe that's why there were bubbles of null energy on the inside, whereas before they just kind of had to just power through it with antimatter in the engines or whatever. So I don't know. I there's no explanation. There's not one offered, but it could just be graphical, it could just be visual, or it could be something more interesting. I don't know.
I'm interested in knowing, in the TOS episode By Any Other Name, where the Kelvins come from the Andromeda universe, did they traverse the barrier with the Enterprise outside the galaxy?
They must have.
They did. Yes, they did. I remember that. So the Enterprise had gone through the Galactic Barrier twice.
Yeah. Cool beans. Kirk, his record's 2-0. Galactic Barriers. Awosakun reports that the shields are ready, and Nilsson confirms all systems are nominal. However, Saru notes the negative energy concentrations were higher than anticipated, meaning the shields might not hold out even with the upgrades. Stamets is already working on it, noting that if they made it through, they should thank Heisenberg rather than him for that. He reports that vacuum state fluctuations are creating discrete bubbles that pass through the barrier at random intervals, comparing them to spatial cells. If they could position the ship inside one of them, they should be able to ride it through to the other side. Burnham points out the lack of consistency in the spatial cells, and Stamets confirms this, with 95% of them being too unstable, showing up in grayscale. The negative energy not concentrated enough to achieve equilibrium. The colorful ones are the best bet, and Zora had found one nearby that would work. Sending the coordinates to the helm, Burnham orders Detmer to plot a course. Detmer warns the ride will be a bit bumpy. Burnham orders a red alert as Discovery moves in, and they enter the barrier. The crew's visual spectra is affected, turning to grayscale as well. There's a great TV show about the power of grayscale. I'll quit tomorrow. It's good.
That was a good one.
Listen,
I'll give you
winter
that
is
one.
in the past. Spring is coming, Dag. Spring is coming at this point.
Well, the shields quickly began to drop. The spatial cell was not large enough to contain the ship, and Saru estimates another 20 seconds. Lieutenant Linus warns of gamma rays from a radioactive burst approaching from port, and Detmer adjusts course to ride it out. The cells form in front of them, and Detmer is able to bring them inside safely. Burnham orders repairs made to the shields and to hold position. Just then, Relac arrives on the bridge, needing a word. When Burnham protests it was not an ideal time, Relac explains that she'd received an encrypted message just before they entered the barrier for both her and Burnham's eyes only.
Dun, dun, dun.
Skip back to the Emerald Chain work camp. Book notices Tarka's expression and asks if he was good. Tarka replies he is. Just then, a cloaked ship flies overhead, one that Booker recognizes as a courier looking for salvage. Flying that low, it was not their first trip. He asks if they would have found the antimatter, but Tarka is confident that it was hidden last time he was there. He admits he comes every year, and Booker asks him why. Flashing back to his time at the camp, Tarka and Oros are going over their numbers again. And Tarka's annoyed as one always trips him up. Oros jokingly notes that for someone who says he was not hard on himself, he was being hard on himself. Just then an alarm sounds. Tarka thinking it was someone trying to escape, but Oros panics, remembering the last time he heard that sound. Something had happened to the last engineer he'd worked with, his hand going fearfully to his neck. Tarka comforts him as he huddles, sobbing until the alarm ceases. As he calms down, Oros asks why Tarka had done that. Tarka replies he never had a real friend before. Oros finally opens up about the equations he'd been working on when he and Tarka met. The variables were for multiverse positioning, and that he had a way out. Tarka thinks there isn't a way out, not with the slave controllers in their necks. True, Oros concedes if one were traveling in this universe. Tarka realizes Oros was designing an interdimensional transporter, and Oros confirms he'd been working on it for years. Tarka's mind boggles at the immense power required for such a device, but Oros believes combining the camp's geothermal power source with the warp core they were building would work. Tarka asks where he would go. Oros explains his people's belief in a place called Kaialis, meaning something like home in their language, a place beyond suffering, a place without the Emerald Chain. What do you guys think so far?
I mean, this whole scene reminds me so much of the Star Trek V, like, Shakari is a real place, I found it, I can lead us there kind of nonsense, right? Like, heaven is a real place that we can all go to, and it's got all these undistinguishable names, but it's a real thing, and I can get us there. It reminds me of that. It's this guy's, like, attempt to rationalize his suffering because it gives him an opportunity to go to heaven properly, and I think Oros is nuts.
Okay.
I agree with Renzo. I'm having a hard time getting on board with the concept of heaven is an actual place you can go to. Hell is an actual place you can go to. I don't think we should be keep putting tangible locations on these things from religion or mythology. I just think that's a little played, maybe too much on the nose, that there's these locations, so that you can, if you have enough power, you can fly to heaven, talk to God or whatever. That's
now
Star Trek V tried to do that.
Yeah,
fell on its face. Let's not do that again.
If his theory and his theorem, it proves that he can jump to a alternate universe, a mirror, or a parallel universe that is better than ours, I'm on board with that, right? Like,
right.
The burn never happened. Your mom stayed with your dad. They never got divorced. Whatever. You can come up with that as like a math thing that you can find and target to and go to. Sure. On board for that. But paradise? Bro,
no.
It's a bit much for me.
Go to frickin' Ryza.
I'm out.
You don't need that kind of power to go there.
To be fair,
Tarka's from Ryza.
Tarka just got from... Yeah, it's probably not so great anymore.
No.
Especially after a notable Klingon committed some eco-terrorism there a few hundred years ago.
Oh, it was fine. It was fine.
Totally right. It's fine.
What did you think about it?
Me?
You didn't say. We did.
I was kind of in the same boat. I was right there with him when he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna jump dimensions," and I'm like, "Yeah, to a place where the Emerald Chain doesn't exist." He's like, "No, I'm going to heaven," and I was like, "Ah."
Right now, you lost me.
And it's not that I'm opposed to concepts of heaven or anything like that. It's that making these places physically capable of transporting to, I don't know. It's a little unnerving. But that
kind of cheapens them, really.
It does.
I agree. So we flash back to Discovery. Relac and Burnham review the message sent by Fleet Admiral Vance just before they entered the barrier. The DMAs moved to a new harvesting location in the Alpha Quadrant, and based on their projections, gravitational waves begin impacting Navarre and Earth within the next 71 hours. This goes back to my, geez, why does Earth always have to be in trouble for this show to move forward?
That's kind of getting old, too. I wish Earth would catch a break from some of this stuff. Every time there's some major issue or calamity,
you know what?
Earth is in danger.
You know what? Just play back some whale song. Tell the DMA what to go do with itself. What if 10C...
Is this a Russian warship go fuck yourself kind of moment?
10C warship, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
What if the 10C are the whale probe people, though?
I knew you were going there.
Can't rule it out.
No, I mean, again, it makes the universe smaller. And according to behind-the-scenes discussions and interviews, the writers have said this is nothing we've ever done before in Star Trek. So all those theories are complete.
I'm with you on them, like, everything always has to relate back to Earth, but that's just typical Star Trek, right? Like, from motion picture on, everything's always a threat to Earth. Got it. Cool, whatever. I actually like the fact that this time it's like, it's a threat to Earth and Navarre. Navarre is right around the corner from Earth. We know that much from the astrogeography of things, but like it's threatening them both. Cool. I mean, it's not like Star Trek has ever threatened to destroy Vulcan or Navarre before, so it's good that we're getting some new content.
We actually have
Wait a minute, say that
destroyed
last part
Vulcan
again?
before.
Right. Yeah.
Good, you got my sarcasm. I thought it was a little thick.
Yeah. No, we could destroy Tellar and Andor though. That'd be fine.
They may not even be there anymore.
Or make it an opportunity.
Destroyed yet.
Make it an opportunity for Relac and Burnham to be a little bit more at odds with each other and have it face Bajor or Cardassia. That would kind of suck.
You haven't seen much about the Cardassians, honestly, so.
It's very true. So
now, see, I think this whole mining thing in 10C, I know what's producing it. It's going to be a ship, large ship. It's going to be Spaceball 1.
Vacuuming up atmospheres.
Oh, Mega Maid. Mega Maid's powered by the Omega. Maid.
He's gone from suck.
It makes sense.
To blow.
This is why Rick Moranis has been off the radar since he came back into the fold. He's reprising his role as Dark Helmet, the 10C leader of space.
So this scene then transitions into a really interesting debate between like Rillick and Burnham about whether they should tell everyone because of just how important Earth and Navarre are to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very interesting philosophical discussion. Does everybody deserve to know? They both agree they deserve to know, but there's a risk of getting them off task if they know, and they need to focus on this mission to prevent there from being a disaster. So it's an interesting point, and I see both sides of it.
I agree. There are definitely things in my life where if somebody told me something was happening, but I still needed to do my job, I could be distracted.
Yeah. I think that they have a right to know, but so the question is, do you tell them now or do you tell them after Earth and Titan and Navarre are destroyed? Would you have rather known before or after?
I mean, it brings Book's stakes into the ship. Book lost Quajon.
I also found it very strange that they mentioned Titan specifically, which granted, I know that they had the Titan raiders that they encountered at the beginning of last season. Sure, I get that, right?
Yeah.
But we also have, like, the moon is occupied, like, has a massive population. Mars has a significant population.
But isn't
right?
Ndoye on the ship?
Is she the one from Titan or is she the one from Earth? I thought she's the one from Earth.
So she's from Earth.
She said in a previous episode when they had the big old delegate get-together that Titan had joined United Earth.
Right.
So when you're emphasizing Titan, I just feel like that's harkening back to this sort of renewed frontier of the solar system.
Okay.
In that Earth and Titan are now recognizable as, their power.
They're a union
base.
state again.
Yeah. I'm a little concerned that we don't have like the Jupiter colonies and like that kind of stuff and sublight speed. How could you be so broken up over
Alpha
that?
Centauri, because it's right there too.
4.3 light years. Yeah, pretty.
It's closer to Earth than Vulcan is. So
it is, but that also just, for those of us who know the distances between Earth and Vulcan, that just impresses upon the range. Literally, within 4 sectors, you've got Earth, Andor, Tellar, Vulcan, and a ton of other species that have been mentioned in those areas.
Well, don't forget that you can get from Earth to Kronos at Warp 4 in about 3 or 4 days.
Thanks, Enterprise.
it's the speed of plot, man. Just the speed of plot.
Yeah. Very, very true. So it's a good debate. And before they get to really resolve it, the ship shakes and Saru calls Burnham back to the bridge. Detmer reports the spatial cell they were in merged in a cluster of 42 others, like a traffic jam. Burnham asks how long it'll take to clear, but Saru is unsure, thinking it could be moments, hours, or even weeks. Harkening back to the news we just received that the gravitational waves are going to be impacting Earth and Navarre, Burnham and Relac exchange some glances. Burnham asks Stamets if he has a solution, and Stamets believes he does. Another cell is forming near a current, which they could write out of the barrier. Zora does not believe the shields will hold that long, but Stamets suggests using the cells blocking them until they collapse. Burnham is weary, given the exposure to the negative energy that would result, and Owusu estimates shields would hold for approximately 5 minutes. Stamets, however, says he is cautiously optimistic-ish about their chances, with no options. Burnham orders a course plotted.
I really like the way Anthony Rapp plays Stamets, right? Like, he is confident about his own intelligence, but he is not overconfident about his abilities to do things or to save people, right? Like, he's very realistic. Like, this might work.
Then again, it might not.
Maybe. Right? Like, I appreciate it. It's good. I like it a lot.
Yeah. What was that? 60% of the time, it works all the time.
3% of the time, I get 100% results.
Just imagine our chief engineers, right? I can't really imagine Scotty saying this. I can't really imagine LaForge saying this. I can't imagine Miles O'Brien saying this. I can't really imagine Bolanator saying it, right? Like, all of them usually try and paint things a bit rosier of a picture. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be like, I mean, we might get through. We might be fucked. Who knows? I can totally see Stamets and O'Brien saying that, though.
That happened in Insurrection. They were like, let's detonate the warp core. And Picard was like, will that work? And Geordi was like, you got me, Captain. Isolytic weapons are...
Riker.
Oh, thanks.
Riker was in command.
You got
banned
me.
By the Kid Americans.
Isolytic weapons are banned by the Kid... or unpredictable. That's why they were banned. Well, go ahead and launch the warp core. I just did. I like that rapport between them in that movie. This isn't about that movie, but I like that we get to see that comfort zone there. And then we flash back to the work camp. It is totally like ruined status. Roots and trees and windows are broken and things are all looted and dusted up. Tarka enters the space that had been his home for close to 2 years, and that the programmable matter had been held in the cabinets nearby. Tarka's mind goes back to his time there, working on equations with Oros. Seeing one of these symbols carved into the nearby wall, Booker finds the cabinets empty, but Tarka reveals a spot under the wall, buried in the sand. He and Oros...
Wait a minute. Hold on a minute. So this programmable antimatter is just sitting in a cupboard like a freaking spice rack? It's that readily available?
Do you not programmable antimatter your omelets before eating them?
Only if they're Qatarian eggs. Only if they're Qatarian eggs.
Right, Qatarian eggs.
It's like the,
and only if there's...
It's like the dill.
There has to be bacon.
It's like the dill to the Qatarian eggs.
No, so I'm with you, Big J. I think it's a little strange that like a sealed bottle can hold it like stable for a decade. Who knows? But let's just compare it to something like plutonium or uranium, right? Like if you have it in a sealed container, you put it somewhere, it'll basically stay that way for millennia, right? If this is something that's shelf stable and unless you're using it, it decays, then yeah.
Well, but okay, so matter and antimatter, if they collide, they touch, a huge release of energy.
Right.
So that's why warp cores can be so fragile and dangerous. Programmable antimatter, wouldn't that follow the same thing if it comes in contact with matter?
I expect so, absolutely. So it's in these little jars that have like a magnetic containment bubble around them, and the magnetism keeps it from touching anything that's matter, and so it just kind of stays.
I hand wave it as it's 32nd century tech magic that probably makes sense by now, but would be impossible 1,000 years ago.
It's not even impossible now, though, right? Like antimatter can be kept from touching matter through a strong enough magnetic envelope. Right?
True, but programmable matter doesn't exist today.
Programmable matter or antimatter don't exist, right? But just following the rules of matter and antimatter, you can still stop them from touching. The only thing that's a question, though, is battery power. I'm hand waving that as the 32nd century is hand waved off much better lithium-ion batteries.
Yes.
I think it was a little too cavalier to say that this programmable antimatter is in a cupboard next to the cans of soup, the chips, and etc. Like it could at least have been in some sort of locked container or
it was a hidden container. Like you couldn't just see it. It had like a whole little slide thing under the ground. It wasn't that easy to find.
I'm not talking about how easy it is to find. just that it was in something a little more quote unquote protected than just opening the pantry, like a case, some kind of case that keeps it stable, or so. I don't know.
It looks pretty well protected where it is, based on the picture, which is number, I don't know what number this is, 325. It looks like it's in a place that's pretty protected and stable there.
Okay. I just thought it was silly, but okay.
I mean, I think it's silly that they managed to keep this much programmable antimatter just kept away forever and it was never found, right? Like, this whole place must have been ransacked after their escape attempt. I can't believe that they didn't find this with a sensor or something, but I mean, it somehow escaped.
Mm-hmm.
It's in a programmable matter jar. It like deflects sensors on the outside, magnetic core on the inside.
And you should be able to detect that there's something here I can't scan, right? Like, that should show up as a sign.
Fine, it shows up as a peanut butter jar on the sensors, and it's empty and
Are
molded.
peanut butters appropriate on this planet? Then that should set off some alarms.
Yes, peanut butter's appropriate on the planet. It's the only thing that survives in outer space is a carbon chain of something made out of peanuts.
I have doubts. Doubts.
I've committed a classical blunder. I went in against Renzo when Star Trek continuity was on the line.
We can all make mistakes. It's fine. But no, let's continue.
So yeah, him and Oros apparently stole the supply to use for the transporter. Booker thinks they never finished it, but Tucker confirms they did, but had to use it sooner than expected because the Emerald Chain was shutting down the camp, and they decided to make their escape. Tarek sees the device that Oros has constructed and calls it a masterpiece, and Oros acknowledges he could not have made it without Tarka's help. He wonders if they have enough power. Tarka points out they were drawing from the entire warp core. They make their preparations and activate the transporter, but the power fails within seconds. They need more energy. The alarms suddenly go off, and both realize the chain was onto them. A thought confirmed when the door to their cell opens and an armed guard enters. Booker asks what happened after that, and Tarka concedes Booker had been right, that he was the worst kind of asshole. Booker understands the feeling, having blamed his father for negotiating with the chain, but realized perhaps he found it easier to blame his father than to face the fact ultimately. He was powerless to stop them. He says that desire to avoid being powerless is what drove him, and perhaps what happened to Oros was what drove Tarka. However, if they were going outside the galaxy together, Booker wanted to know who he was dealing with. Tarka recalls being beaten by the guard in his cell, who reveals that Tarka told Osira about Oros' transporter in exchange for his freedom. He told her that it would never work. Tarka struggles with the guard and ultimately takes his weapon, shooting him dead. Tarka is remorseful about his betrayal, having made the deal before he got to know Oros, and promises to get them both out. He uses the guard's weapon to first disable and remove his own slave controller, and then Oros's. He tried to help Oros to his feet, but his ribs are broken and is in too much pain to move. Oros forgives Tarka, who believes he doesn't deserve forgiveness, but Oros assures him he too would have done anything for freedom. Oros would find a way to fix the transporter, and they would go to Kylese together. But he urges Tarka to leave now. Tarka promises he will come back for him. Tarka hid in a cave for a week, and when he came out, there was a massive power surge in the camp, and ships leaving. When he returned, the camp was deserted. Oros was gone, but Tarka had found their symbol for Kylese, which was the symbol for the golden ratio. He believes Oros made it to their new home. He continued to return every year, hoping to find another sign, and eventually built his own transporter, but could not find the power source until the DMA. That, Tarka concludes, was who Booker was dealing with. Again, we go back to what we were talking about at the beginning, is like, if you're using a refrigerator to power your super cool transporter, why do you need a star to power your next super cool transporter? And
honestly, he could have just found another planet somewhere where he could make another geothermal tap. Mm-hmm. He's got the science budget of the Federation or of the Emerald Chain, depending on when he's around, right? he's got the ability to get these things set up another warp core. You've got the geothermal tap, and just do it, right? Like, there's no need to go to this extragalactic uber power source, right? Like, it's just a matter of an order of magnitude of scale, right? Like, a warp core is a lot of power. A geothermal plant maybe is a good bit of power, maybe, but yeah, I don't know why he needs this thing that can cause the DMA to do it instead. It's a lot. It's a leap.
The scalability is mind-boggling between the two.
Well, I do think that it's a little bit of a stretch that only the DMA has the kind of power that he needs.
Yeah.
Well, he does say that the DMA has more than enough power for his needs, right? But yeah,
Right.
I'm with you.
But again, scalability. We're talking about effectively that Oros found a way to do it with a glass of water, and now Tarka is saying he needs the entire ocean to do the same thing.
Good analogy.
Right.
Yeah. Honestly, he could have just gotten 2 or 3 warp cores, right? Like, if he's in charge of the Federation's research for Spore Drive, just say, hey, I need 3 warp cores to try powering this thing on a larger thing so we can jump the whole of Starbase, or a whole Starbase. They're like, okay, here's the 3 fucking warp cores, have fun. And then he just goes and does what he wants.
We had them right here. They were in the cupboard.
Man, that
Right.
reminds me of the Starfleet of Hold My Beer.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing when I said it, but yeah.
If you're listening or watching and you haven't yet, Google the Starfleet of Hold My Beer and read it in its entirety. It's hilarious.
It's a Tumblr discussion about, like, the approach of humans in Star Trek and what other races might think of it.
Yes,
it's truly hilarious.
It's absolutely great. And that's why Vulcans let humans do whatever the hell they want.
It's too dangerous not to. Let them blow themselves up.
All right, so we go back to the Discovery, who's losing its forward shield emitters. Great reference back to the whole Adira thing that we'd heard at the beginning of the episode. Adira reports that they are working on repairs. It's going to be a few more minutes. They're on their way to that last spatial cell that they're going to ride through to the other side of the barrier, and it's going to get them there roughly within the hour. We're getting all the bad news. Owoshikun reports the shields are at 4%. Stamets could maybe buy them maybe another 30 seconds, maybe. Like, he's very hesitant to even say it. And it just doesn't look like it's going to be enough. So they start doing what I thought was a very awkward, like, reminiscing about what they want to go back to when they can go back to Earth, right? So someone says they want to go to a place called Astoria in Oregon. Somebody talks about going to the Pacific Crest Trail, right? Owoshikun and Detmer both talk about Hawaii, right? Like, it felt very forced to me.
Here's how I read it.
Mm-hmm.
We know as the audience that Earth's in danger. So this nostalgia moment definitely enhances that sentiment. But what I saw was, Christopher is like, we're all going to die. And Nilsson is like, we're not going to die. You're going to be skiing again. And Nilsson isn't actually like, I don't think Nilsson is actually like saying, no, we're going to be skiing again. I think Nilsson is focusing everybody's attention on the job. Don't worry about the 30 seconds. Trust the crew. We'll get through this. And the unsaid part is, and if we don't, it won't matter.
I get that.
Let's just focus on the job.
Very forced to me, right? For everyone to be like, I miss bagels in New York City. I want to go back to Miami. I want to have this. All these things that are totally an Earth thing, right? I get it. I get why they do it from a production standpoint, but it just seems forced.
If anything, it was too Americentric for me.
Oh, that's fair.
Like, why is Owoshikun nostalgic about the United States?
Surfing in Hawaii.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, maybe that was a great time for Owoshikun, and maybe she's just going with Detmer because Detmer's the one who said that she wanted to go there, which, woot. But
somebody should have said they wanted to go to Germany for some brats or something.
Germany or South Africa or Paris or China or Russia or someplace.
Australia, if it's still there.
30.
Or Atlantis, since it was brought up.
The Atlantis Project, that would have been a good callback to
yeah,
family.
Either way, I'm with you. Definitely America-centric, a little strange there. But I just think it's really weird that that's what they decided to use. And there are also non-humans on the bridge, too, right? Like, Linus was on the bridge. We didn't hear Linus saying, oh, I missed the Scarlet Caves on Soria, right? It was just the humans, and it was just them talking about things that they miss on Earth.
Not wrong.
And I think that the reason they were doing this is because they're 30 seconds away from death, and so take their mind off of that existential threat and talk about something, anything, places where you'd like to go.
I
and
feel like the
visit.
reason why they did it was just to add more energy to the discussion between Rillick and Burnham about whether to tell the crew or not. I think that's why this scene is there.
Yes.
And that's fine.
It's there to add
But
weight.
it just feels forced. They could have done it a bit more subtly.
They could have. I won't disagree on that point. It's definitely the point of the scene is a narrative tool to give pressure to Burnham and Relax to tell the crew.
Now, I will say that the way that that was handled in the next scene was actually really cool. With Burnham being like, well, we've got something to tell the crew, and then lets the president say it. I really liked that, right? Like, that is putting authority in its proper place. That is allowing your elected leader to speak and tell you this thing that everybody should understand. It was great. It was moving. I really thought that that was a very good scene.
Yeah, it was. But I get what you guys are saying, that everyone on the bridge, every human on the bridge wants to go somewhere in the U.S. They could have, if they even call it the U.S., then they could have spread it out and done a little more with it. But you're right. I think that they could have been a lot more less bland by centering it on what we know as America today and spread it out a little bit. But missed opportunity.
So our next scene is really cool. We've got Zora and Stamets like talking and complimenting each other, and Adira pops into engineering, and they have like this very non-professional, just like familial, found family discussion about how much Stamets cares for Gray and Adira and wants them to both be happy, and how when Stamets was being raised, his own father was not that, so he needs to overcompensate for that and be very supportive of Adira and Gray. Lovely scene.
Mm-hmm.
And Adira
in our next-
considers themselves warned.
Yes, right. Warning them that you may get additional like attention this way. So that was good. Yes. Next scene is back in Burnham's ready room. It's here we have the discussion about like Rillick understanding that the crew is of Earth and needs to know about Earth. They talk about where Gabrielle is. She's still on Pidjar with Javini, so she's not actually on Navarre and in danger because of this. Which, to me, makes me think that maybe Navarre is going to get fucked in this next episode, because Tarina is here on the ship and Gabrielle is not on Navarre. So do we know anybody who is on there that's named? Nope. So they might blow up Navarre just to prove the seriousness of the DMA again.
I would hate that. We've
Me
already
too.
blown up Vulcan. Let's not.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm totally okay with them blowing up Earth. We don't know anybody on Earth either except for Ndoye, and she's on the ship, so it's cool.
Yeah, we are in this universe. We've already lost Romulus and Remus. In the Kelvin universe, we lost Vulcan. I think if they do that with Navarre, it should be something different. I mean, if you're going to put Earth under continuously the subject of some kind of issue or crisis or whatnot, just go balls to the wall. Just do it. Just do it. Blow Earth up. You know, just get a big pair of them and do it.
That's boldly going where no one's gone before.
It is. Well, you know what? Here's what I have to say about it. Quit teasing about it. Quit bullshitting about it.
I mean, it's not never gone before. Titan AE blew up the Earth in like the first 7 minutes of the movie, and it was a great movie.
Let's talk about Star Trek for a second, though. We have threatened the Earth a lot of times. There's only so many times a planet can dodge a bullet.
Yes, that's why I'm saying if you want to keep going this route, go ahead and do something really bold. Just
put up or shut up. Yeah.
What do you think, audience? What do you think, audience? Comment and let us know, or hit us up at Beyond Trek Pod on Twitter. Let us know what you think. Should Star Trek destroy Earth, given the threat posed by the DMA?
Right.
I didn't think I'd ever hear the words coming out of my mouth, but it's time.
We also heard that President Rillick has a partner who just started a new research project on Luna, the first mention of Luna that we've gotten in quite a while, and their mother's family lives on Earth. So cool. So Rillick has a personal tie to the planet. She's not a robot. She's just thinking that people need to stay on task. So they kind of agree to disagree on the merits of it, but that Rillick is going to think about it. They have to support each other. So Burnham leaves the president alone with her thoughts and like goes back to the bridge.
Yep.
Back on Booker's ship. I almost said Tarka's ship, which is almost what it feels like sometimes.
I gotta say, I love the wood contouring on the inside.
It's a Quajan thing. They love that like nature aesthetic.
It gives me like the 1980s side paneling on the station wagon feel, and the wood dash in the console area. It's just so remarkably, awesomely nostalgic, and still
Griswold
future-y
family
cool.
cruiser.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. Sorry, Tuvix just has the zoomy, so he's just zipping back and forth between two couches. So
if he does it fast enough, he'll split in two again.
Oh no!
Don't do
I don't think
this,
I can handle
Dag.
two of them.
Don't do it.
No, so Tarka applies the programmable antimatter to the shield generator and tells Booker that they could go when ready. Booker at that point is telling Tarka not to blame himself for leaving Oros behind. But Tarka goes, "There's not a day where I don't blame myself." You know, this whole self admonishment that he's got going on for this makes sense.
He
right?
betrayed him.
He did. He had been betraying him from the very beginning.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Tarka then does this whole like, along the way, we're gonna save billions of lives. So it's a win-win. I get to go home and save billions of lives. Okay, but Tarka, here's the question here. If you could go to Oros's heaven at the expense of a few billion lives, or without saving them even, just letting things go on their own, would you still do it? And he absolutely would.
He absolutely tried to.
Yeah.
He already tried that.
He's going to. His only motivation is getting to this guy, and
You know,
he'll do anything to be able to accomplish that.
now I think he's
shown
playing
us-
book.
Well,
I mean, I think
yeah,
he's been playing book for quite some time.
Well,
we
yeah,
know that.
but it takes me a while to catch up to these things because I want to believe in reliable narrators.
Tarka's playing book. I mean, the story he told is all true. I don't think that Tarka made that up or whatnot, but we all know that this entire time, up to and including this point, Tarka has always had that underlying goal of anything I do here goes towards me getting to this alternate universe, or right. Everything is about that, and he's not hiding it. He's shown it
All right.
multiple times.
Yep.
All right. So now he's just telling Book what he wants to hear so he can try again.
Yeah.
Now, what I do find very interesting, though, is this setup that now Booker's ship is going to have to traverse the Galactic Barrier. We're probably not going to see it, right? But their ship being small and tiny, it should have a lot less trouble going through with these vacuum bubbles, really. It should be pretty easy for them. It's also a lot smaller, and it has good shields, so it should make it through pretty smoothly.
It was also built on a 32nd century frame instead
True.
of rebuilt on a 23rd century frame.
And it's got the next generation spore drive, so maybe it'll even get closer than like 4 light years.
Maybe.
Probably. So I think they're going to have an easier time getting through it because they're already behind. They're a little bit behind on the race, so I think they'll definitely get through because that's what this is. It's a race to see who gets there first, and I like how each side is doing like their own separate thing that they need to do to get to the next point.
I don't want them there, right? Like I am going to be so worried that Booker and Tarka are gonna fuck up first contact somehow and be like, oh look, a shiny thing. Tarka goes off to steal their power core in the middle of negotiations or something, right?
Mhm.
Like something like this is the problem. I hope that
what's
we end
gonna-
up with like some grand sacrifice from Tarka, and he redeems himself by sacrificing himself to save the galaxy. But otherwise, fuck that guy.
He's not going to do it.
No, I don't think so either.
No
but that would be the
way.
only way to redeem himself at this point for me. So we cut back to Discovery. Detmer reports they are through the Galactic Barrier. They're officially outside. It's a big deal. The crew look outside of the view screen, and it has very few stars because you're in extragalactic space. So those are not stars. Those are other galaxies you're seeing at that point. And that's very far away. So it is very strange. Nilsson adds that very few people have seen such things, which is factual. We only know about Kirk doing it a couple times, the Valiant once. Picard's crew goes outside, but they don't really hang out here very often. So we don't know about many people who've done this. And yeah, Rillick steps in and says that they should address the ship first before they go any further, before laying in their course to rendezvous with 10C. And Christopher opens up a ship-wide hail, and Rillick announces the bad news that the DMA has moved. It's in Ranger Devar, Titan, Earth. The bridge crew, everyone there looks like their dog has died. Like, they all look really somber. We see cut scenes of Tarina and Ndoye, and everybody else is just looking really rough. But Burnham just looks at Rillick with like admiration and respect, right? Like, she's doing the right thing. She's telling us, good. Saru sits down with Tarina, and they find each other to be a comforting presence. So that's basically that.
Okay, so a quick question for you. They've left the Galactic Barrier, and they've detected this hyperfield and a planet 2 light years from that field. Is that how it works?
Yeah, they're going to go to a planet that is 2 light years away from the field. It has no signs of life, but they want to investigate there.
Does this field even matter then? Why throw that in if it's the planet they're going to? I'm not sure what the...
They're going to this planet because it's outside of the field. This isn't 10C's planet. 10C is inside of the field. They're just not going straight to the field. They want to do a little bit of recon in the area first.
Are we using the planet sort of as like a launching point then?
Yeah.
Set up
They
a,
don't-
a field base.
okay. Recon.
Well, they do have time. They've got 3 days, right? 71 hours or whatever.
Okay. Well, yeah, minus whatever time it took them to get through the Galactic Barrier.
Of course, they're going to receive a message and be like, "Oh, by the way, Discovery was destroyed 6,000 years ago, and traveling through the Galactic Barrier had its own little time dilation issue, and it's already over."
Oh no, it's even worse than that. We're gonna get like a message from Kovich and Reese, like coming through the Galactic Barrier, being like, "Hey, did you guys figure it out already? Because we just turned it off on this end." It's like kind of moment.
Okay, so here's the $1 million question.
We just had Mega Man go from suck to blow.
Why is there a Galactic Barrier?
The narrative needed it, and now we're stuck with it.
So in beta canon, right? There's a book about this. It was put up by the Q to protect us from an entity that they locked outside of our galaxy. An entity that they called Zero. It was like a Q, similar power, but just evil and malicious, right? They put them out there. They put up the Galactic Barrier to keep it out, and that's it. That's the explanation. The book is really good. I believe it's called Q-in-Law is where that first comes up.
Okay. So there's something in beta canon, but in regards to
Nothing.
the canon, there's like no reason that there should be a Galactic Barrier, because as much as Star Trek has tried to go off of science, what's that?
Q-Strike was the book, yeah.
Okay. I think this part is like, really, technically in real life, there's no Galactic Barrier. You could go straight out of the galaxy and keep going to the next one.
As far as we know.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's what I thought was just kind of odd, is that there's what would be the reason behind having the existence of a Galactic Barrier. It's not something that's natural, at least with our understanding of how
No.
space works. And
We could probably look it up and be like, why did Gene Roddenberry come up with this concept? Whoever wrote the episode, maybe. But I just, it's
for
here.
the spectacle
we
of
have
being
it,
science fiction.
and now we have to deal with it. And maybe they'll address it in Alpha Canon and be like, oh, 10C had erected the Galactic Barrier up as like a construction zone for their mining operations, and now that we've made first contact, we'll set up your galaxy as an endangered species protection zone, and we'll lift the barrier from your people, and we won't mine it anymore. Sorry about that. Let's go over to this other galaxy. I hear what do you call it? Andromeda? Yeah, we'll just nuke them. Sorry, Kelvins.
But no, the story that they set up in that like beta canon book, the Q Space, Q Strike, Q Zone, that trilogy of the Q Continuum books, it's actually really good. Like the basic premise is Zero is a Q but from another dimension. Same kind of power, same kind of thing. But because he's not native to this dimension, he's not completely able to go anywhere he wants. He convinces Q, a young Q, our Q, John Delancey Q, to help him out and to free his buddies. And he gets three other omnipotent, semi-omnipotent creatures, entities. They go around, they cause all kinds of hell. They cause the downfall of the Deccan Empire. They fuck with the Iconians quite a bit. And then Q wakes up essentially and realizes just how evil these other creatures are. And he traps all of them or imprisons them all, either outside of the galaxy, in the center of the galaxy, or in other places, right? So the god that was in Star Trek V is another one of these. Yeah. It was a whole thing. The Beta Langkow creature is another one. That was one from TOS as well. Trelane was an associate of theirs, right? So it links up a lot of these omnipotent beings all together.
Makes the universe smaller.
But it makes them make sense at least.
I suppose.
Sure. Yeah.
All right, I'm done on that. So our last scene in this episode is
warping.
Is it?
Yeah, they're warping. They're heading for that planet.
Oh, that's true.
They have their little discussion. They talk about the planet, and then we look out the window, and we're warping. And my brain is like, "What are we warping through? Where's all this light coming from?" But I don't need to. I don't even know the answer to that. It's just nitpicky.
Yeah, the warp effect did look cool. I liked it.
Yeah, we don't need to know that.
Yeah, we have to choose our nitpicky battles, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Pick
just
your
what
battles.
I can't.
Do you want to
care
die
about.
on that hill?
So we're 2 episodes left in Star Trek Discovery, where we will wrap up the 10C arc, according to Michelle Paradise, the showrunner. Discovery has been renewed for a season 5, so we'll definitely catch up with them again in another season. But there's 2 weeks left. In addition to that, Paramount Plus is going to be running the first 2 episodes of Picard season 2 in tandem with the next 2 episodes of Discovery. So I don't know how we're going to record all of that, but it's going to be fun. We'll try to make time for all of that and more. And if you made it this far into the episode, really appreciate your time and attention today. We hope you're having a good one. And thank you for always going boldly with Beyond Trek Podcast. Hey everybody, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to our Patreon and Anchor supporters. Big thanks to Stephanie Baker, S. Tam, Anne Marie, Jim Cook, and Nora Hickson. We really appreciate your support. Thanks for being a part of Beyond Trek Podcast.
We are Beyond Trek Podcast. Lower your inhibitions and surrender your years. We will add inspirational and hilarious Trek content to your day. Your attention will adapt to subscribe to us. Resistance is futile.